So today we have to talk about the biggest story on the internet this week, which is what is happening with Kate Middleton, also known as the Princess of Wales.
Specifically, what is happening with her photograph that she posted and the many questions it has raised about the fate of our shared reality.
Yes. So let's just give if you've not been keeping up with this story, let's just give a basic timeline of what's been happening.
And truly everyone has been keeping up with this story, so make it snappy, Roose.
Okay. So basically, about 2 months ago on January 17th, Kensington Palace released a statement notifying the public for the first time that Princess Catherine had gone into the hospital for planned abdominal surgery.
And Princess Catherine is Kate Middleton because once you're a princess, you get a bunch of new names.
Right. So technically, it's Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales, was admitted to the hospital yesterday for planned abdominal surgery. This statement comes as a surprise to people who watch the royal family. No one had said anything about her having abdominal surgery.
She had great abs.
Yes. And the royal family is pretty withholding about personal details, so people sort of roll with it. Then, a couple days later, we get the start of the conspiratorial talk. A Spanish journalist named Concha Calleja, who has sort of written a lot about the royal family over the years, is also something of a conspiracy theorist herself.
She wrote a book suggesting that Michael Jackson had been murdered to give you a sense of sort of where this person falls on the truth versus fiction spectrum.
Exactly. So not exactly Walter Cronkite, but this report is widely sort of talked about. She reports that Kate Middleton was actually admitted to the hospital several weeks before Kensington Palace said she was, and that she wasn't doing very well. About a week later, the same Spanish journalist suggests that actually the Princess of Wales is in a medically induced coma. Following this report, a spokesperson for Kensington Palace responds basically saying this is all total nonsense. From what I understand, this is quite rare that a royal family spokesperson will comment on what are essentially internet rumors.
So the fact that even they denied it then maybe raised some suspicions.
Right. So then following this denial from Kensington Palace, there are a bunch of seemingly small things that just kind of like tip people more into the land of conspiracy theories. Prince William pulls out of a planned memorial service that he was going to go to at the last minute, claiming that it was a personal matter. Then a few weeks later, on March 4th, paparazzi take some grainy photos of the Princess of Wales with her mom driving in a car, and people immediately start to think like, this isn't Kate Middleton. This is a body double. This is, people come up with all kinds of theories about why this is not actually the Princess of Wales. This is someone pretending to be the Princess of Wales. What has happened to the Princess of Wales?
So the suggestion is this was essentially staged for the benefit of the paparazzi.
Exactly. And then just a couple days ago, we got the biggest turn of events in this saga so far, which was that on Sunday, which is Mother's Day in the UK, which, side note, I didn't know that they had a different Mother's Day than we have here.
Well, it's because they have a different word. They call them mums.
That's true. So on Mum's Day, Kensington Palace released a photo of Princess Catherine with her kids, and it was signed with a C, which is what Princess Catherine does with all of her social media posts. And this photo was presumably intended to sort of dispel these rumors and say, look, here she is looking happy with all of her kids surrounding her. Instead, this totally backfires because people start pointing out that this photo has been pretty obviously manipulated.
I mean, the forensic analysis that was immediately applied to this photo, I truly do not remember anything like it. And on one hand, yes, it's obvious that people are going to be poring over this photo for any signs of strange things. But man, did people do this in a hurry.
Yeah, it got the full Redditor treatment. This photo did. People noticed that the kids' hands were sort of oddly positioned. There was some clearly some editing done on one of the daughter's sleeves. Princess Catherine was not wearing any of her wedding rings, and there were just various other details. There was one window pane that looked kind of blurred. There was a zipper that was misaligned, and following this sort of uproar about this photo, the major photo wires that distribute photos to the news media from Kensington Palace issued what is known as a kill order.
They killed it.
They killed it.
This is like the equivalent of in the old newspaper days when you'd realize you were about to make a mistake, and so you'd run down to the printing presses and you would say, "Stop the presses!" Right? This just does not happen all that often, Kevin. That we see one of these kill orders.
Yes. So basically, a kill order is something that Getty or the AP or another news agency can issue to people who might use their photos saying, do not use this photo anymore. In this case, these agencies said it appears that this photo has been manipulated, and so we do not think you should use it anymore. And this rarely happens. Mia Sato, who's a reporter for The Verge, looked into this and reported that someone at a wire service told her they could count on one hand the number of kill orders they issue in an entire year. So this is a big deal.
It is.
Right. So shortly after this kill order came out, Kensington Palace released another statement. This one supposedly from Kate as well, also signed with a C. Quote, like many amateur photographers, I do occasionally experiment with editing. I wanted to express my apologies for any confusion the family photograph we shared yesterday caused. I hope everyone celebrating had a very happy Mother's Day. C. So they also didn't release any other photos or give the unedited version of the manipulated photo. And so this statement is not, I would say, it did not do a good job of placating the critics who believe that something more is going on.
No, this is a real raise more questions than it answers moment because, if she wanted to, she might have said at least one or two things about how she edited the photo, right? Or like if there was any particular thing, she says, like my daughter's sweater didn't look quite right. And so I want to see if I could fix that, obviously won't make that mistake again. That was not what happened here.
Right. This was not a simple case of sort of taking out some red eye or maybe using the blur tool to cover up like a zit on your face or something like that.
Right. Or trying to smooth out your skin or make you look younger, like, you would edit one of your photos.
So we should say, to sort of close the loop on the saga of the Princess of Wales, there are a lot of theories going around out there on social media about what has happened to the Princess of Wales.
And what's the most irresponsible one?
Well, the one that I've seen going around that I think is the funniest was someone actually compared the timeline of her disappearance with the production schedule for The Masked Singer and speculated that she's been hiding because she's on The Masked Singer. I don't think that is probably
I wish that were
the real answer here.
I wish that were true.
But, it's none of our business where the Princess of Wales is.
Well, it is sort of a taxpayer-funded position over there, right? So, like, arguably there is some public interest in, how is the Princess of Wales doing?
Sure, but I should say it's none of our business as the hosts of a technology podcast.
Because we're American citizens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we fought a war to not have to care about the whereabouts of the royal family.
I would say we fought a war to only care about them when it was interesting.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So you may be wondering, why are we talking about this? This is just like some spurious gossip about the royal family. Is this really a tech story? And Casey, what is our answer to that?
Well, look, you're right, Kevin, that generally speaking, when is the last time that a member of the royal family was seen in public is not typically something that we're interested in. But there were so many weird things about this photo that it actually did wind up squarely in our zone. Because what do we often talk about here? We talk about media being manipulated. We talk about our shared sense of reality. How do we separate truth from fiction? And all of a sudden, a very frivolous story had raised what I would say are actually some pretty important questions.
Yeah. The first thing that people, surmised from this was that this may have been AI manipulation in some way because it is 2024 and a lot of AI image manipulation is going on.
And it's admittedly very funny to think that the palace was like, gosh, we need to put out a photo of Kate, and so just went into ChatGPT and was like, show us the Princess of Wales and her family smiling for a Mother's Day photo.
Right. So it does not actually appear that this was due to AI. Obviously AI image generators have, well-documented problems. Sometimes they put extra fingers on your hand. Sometimes they make your
Sometimes they'll put
weird.
extra hands on your fingers.
Yeah. Yes, but it seems pretty clear at this point that this was not AI. In fact, people have sort of been examining the metadata of this image and have sort of concluded that it was shot in a Canon 5D Mark IV camera and that it was edited on Photoshop for Mac. So this is like not a generative AI scandal, it appears.
But this actually is a really important piece of metadata, Kevin, because something that has happened over the past several years is that the question, what is a photograph, has gotten very complicated. Our friends over at The Verge Cast talk about this a lot because when you take a photo with your smartphone, it's taking many, many images at once, and then it is creating a composite out of them. And so any image that you're seeing in your phone's camera roll these days, there are good chances that it's not actually what the camera saw. It is a bit of a generative AI experience that you're getting now with every single photo. So if the metadata had come back about the Kate Middleton photo saying this was shot on an iPhone 15 instead some ways, this would be a more complicated question.
Yes, it's not just that people can now easily edit photos on their smartphones. It's that the actual cameras that are built into the smartphones often these days have AI manipulation built into them. So one example is the new Google Pixel phone has a feature called Best Take, where basically it takes a bunch of photos. Say you're posing for a photo with your family, and in 1 millisecond, when one photo is taken, someone is blinking, and the next millisecond, someone else is blinking, or someone's not smiling. You can essentially have it take a bunch of photos and pick out the best versions of each person's face and kind of smush that all into one composite image. And that all happens without the user sort of having to do anything proactive. That's just like the basic camera on the phone does that. We also know that there's this whole field of what's called computational photography, which is basically building algorithms and AI into the way that cameras actually capture images. So for example, on the iPhone, if you use portrait mode, that portrait mode is using AI to do things like segmentation, to say, this is part of the background, this should be blurry, this is part of the subject of the photo, that should be crisp and clear, and that is essentially a form of AI manipulation that is taking place inside the iPhone camera itself.
Yeah, all of this is just to say that there actually is a lot of AI manipulation going on these days in every photo that you're taking with your iPhone. And of course, we think of this as generally benign because this is not inventing children that you don't have. It's not usually putting a smile on your face if there wasn't one there. Although, if your eyes were closed, it will open your eyes for you, right? So I just think that's good to keep in mind as we move into this new era, is that the images that we're seeing, these are not the Polaroids that we were taking in elementary school, my friend.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest angle that got me interested in this story is just what it means for kind of the what people are calling the post-truth landscape, right? We've had lots of people writing their takes on this week, talking about how this is sort of the canary in the coal mine for this new era of sort of post-truth reality making that we have entered into. Charlie Warzel had a good piece in The Atlantic this week where he writes, quote, "For years, researchers and journalists have warned that deepfakes and generative AI tools may destroy any remaining shreds of shared reality. The royal portrait debacle illustrates that this era isn't forthcoming. We're living in it." So, Casey, do you think this portends anything different about our social media landscape or the way that we sort of make or determine what's true in this new era?
I think it's definitely a step down that road, but at the same time, I think that if the sort of worst comes to pass, we'll actually look back and we will be nostalgic for this moment, Kevin, because this was a case where we could just look at the photo with our own eyes and know with total certainty that the image had been doctored to the point that the palace had to come out relatively soon afterwards and say, yeah, you caught us. Our expectation, I think, is that within a couple of years, the palace might be able to come up with a totally convincing image of the princess with her children. And, people who study AI maybe will be able to determine, okay, yeah, this was created with generative AI tools, but maybe they'll say we actually can't say one way or another. That is the truly scary moment. But is this a step on the road to get there? Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the one thing that surprised me is just how quickly people jumped to skepticism when this photo was released. It feels like sort of in the span of like 10 years, we've gone from pics or it didn't happen to like pics and I'm going to study the pics to tell you why it didn't happen. It's like the mere existence of photographic evidence is not enough to assuage people's concerns about something being real or fake or not. In fact, in this case, putting this photo out just fueled the speculation more.
Absolutely. Now, one, I think, funny subplot here, Kevin, and I wonder if you have an opinion on this, and it is, does the Princess of Wales use Photoshop? Like, some people saw the statement and said, that's absolutely ridiculous. If you're the Princess of Wales, there's no way you're going to sit down and learn how to use Photoshop. I can sort of see it from the reverse, though. You're cooped up in that palace all day. You have your ladies in waiting taking care of most of the household affairs. Maybe you shoot a few cute pictures of the kids and you say, oh, I don't like the way that my daughter's, sweater looks. I'm going to see if I can clean that up. So in a way, I find it totally plausible that the princess would learn how to use Photoshop for fun. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if you had told me that, the king, who's elderly,
King Charles, yeah,
it's King Charles was using Photoshop, I would have said, I'm gonna need to see some more proof of that.
Yeah,
but Kate Middleton, she's in her 40s, she's a mom. Moms like to edit photos of their kids. I edited a photo of my kid ever to remove some crud from his shirt? Yeah. I'm guilty.
All right. So this is sort of a coin flip, we think, whether Kate Middleton knows how to use Photoshop.
Yeah, I can see it. I can also see reasons for skepticism. Another argument that I thought was interesting that I wanted to talk to you about today is something that Ryan Broderick wrote about in his newsletter, Garbage Day, in a post that was titled, Misinformation is Fun, where he's basically saying, look, we now, this happens all the time. Something comes out, people get, upset or nervous about it. They accuse it of being fake. We get all these expert researchers and reporters sort of coming out to fact check it and say, actually, this is fake or this isn't true. But his basic thing is like, look, people are missing that this stuff is fun. It's fun to speculate. It's fun to spread rumors. It's fun to try to connect the dots on some complicated conspiracy theory.
Yes.
This is a piece that people miss when they write about conspiracy theories, as both you and I have done over the years.
Yeah, and it's important because all of these platforms that seek out, often for good reasons, I think, to want to eliminate misinformation are fighting an uphill battle. And the uphill battle is their users love this stuff. Their users want to spend time on their platforms arguing incessantly about the fate of Kate Middleton.
Do you think that the platforms have a responsibility here? I mean, in this case, this was not a platform story. This photo was disseminated. I guess it was put on Instagram and maybe other social media networks. But it was really the photo wires and the photo agencies stepping in and issuing this kill order that really turned the volume up on this story considerably. So what do you think this says about sort of who is responsible for gatekeeping here and telling whether an image is fake or not?
Well, the photo wires here are a great example of an institution that does still have some authority and does still have some trust in, and those are becoming fewer and further between in this current world. So I'm very grateful that we have folks like that who can come in and say, oh yeah, this is obviously doctored, get it the heck out of there. There will probably be examples like in our election, for example, where that just is not the case. And there is no authority that can come in and sort of say definitively one way or another, this was doctored or not.
Yeah. And I just think this whole discussion about doctored imagery is going to get so much harder as more and more cameras just come by default with AI tools installed in them. So 5 years from now, is it even going to be possible to take a quote unquote real photo? Or is every camera and smartphone on the market going to have some kind of AI image processing or improvement built into it?
I've actually hired an oil painter just to sort of create my likeness because it's the only way that I can trust that I'm seeing my own face, Kevin.
I like that.
Yeah.
So, Casey, I remember a few years ago when I was doing a lot of reporting on crypto and sort of blockchain projects, one of the things that people would pitch to me periodically in this space is like, here's a way to use the blockchain to keep a kind of, editable version of the metadata or the sort of to tell the provenance of an image so that you can have a record on the blockchain that says this image is real, it was not doctored or manipulated in any way, and here's how anyone can go prove it. So does this scandal and the associated drama make you think that something like that is actually necessary?
So look, I don't like solutions that are on the blockchain. I'm not going to say that no one could ever come up with a way to do that would be fast and efficient and worthwhile. I don't think it's possible to do that today. But there are initiatives to try to verify the authenticity of images on the internet. So there's something called the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity. This is a consortium of a bunch of tech companies, including Adobe, Google, Intel, Microsoft, and they are trying to come up with some kind of standard so that you can embed in your photo the idea that this image was taken with a camera and it was not just spat out by an AI generator. Now, even in a world where that exists, people are still going to share these photos on social media. They're still going to have endless debates, but it does empower gatekeepers, right? If there's some image that for whatever reason is like playing a role in an election and a Meta or a YouTube or maybe even a TikTok, if that still exists, if they can look at the metadata and say, oh yeah, this was just obviously created with generative AI, maybe then they're able to attach a warning label to it. Maybe then they're able to, fact check it, and that's really useful, right? Newspapers, other journalistic outlets will be able to do the same thing. So it's still a little bit tricky. Can you actually come up with a metadata standard that isn't easily removed from the image? There's stuff to be figured out, but if you want to know how do I think we will solve this problem, it's going to look something like that.
Yeah. So a lot of people are saying like this incident has told them or informed them that we are sort of headed into this post-truth dystopia. I actually took a different lesson from it. This whole thing has sort of made me more optimistic because it has showed that people actually do care what's true. People actually do want the stuff that they are relying on that's in their social media feeds. They do actually care whether or not it's realistic or that it represents reality, and they are willing to go to extravagant lengths, including picking apart pixel by pixel photographs of the royal family to determine whether what they are looking at is real or not.
I think that's a really smart point, because I do think that there is a kind of defeatism that creeps into these discussions. I was like, oh, we're going to have an infopocalypse and we'll never know what's real anymore. But I think what you said is exactly right, that we have a profound need to know what is true and false, and people are clearly ready to volunteer a significant part of every day to figuring out what is true or false if the story is important enough.
Yeah, I think we should have a sort of a coalition of amateur sleuths. Instead of picking apart these photos, well, maybe that's a good use of their time for 1 week, but these people clearly have time on their hands. They clearly have expertise in digital sleuthing. Let's put them to work doing something more socially beneficial.
Absolutely.
Have them solve some cold cases.
Yeah. Take a lesson from Encyclopedia Brown, Nancy Drew, the Hardy Boys. Basically everything I read when I was 9. Those kids were onto something. When we come back, why your car is snitching on you.
It's driving me crazy.
I'll allow it. Hey, that's the end of this clip. If you liked what you saw, head on over to our page and subscribe, and you can get the full podcast. We do a show like this almost every week on tech and the future. Head on over there now and subscribe.